Hey guys, today we're going to talk about the colonial people. This is very similar to the information that we went over in class, and we're just basically taking the people that were alive during this time and categorizing them into 6 different categories. And then we're going to look at their responsibilities, and we're also going to look at their social status. And remember, their social status is kind of like their social responsibility, the privileges that they had, whether or not they had the right to vote or very much say so in what happened socially in the community during that time. The first group of people we want to look at is women. Now, women were the homemakers and the caregivers. They were responsible for taking care of the children, for making and mending clothing, for doing all of the cooking, for taking care of the farm animals, and also for taking care of the family garden. They had very limited educational opportunities, and their social position or social status was very low. They had no voting rights. They didn't have very much say-so in their community. They had a lot of responsibilities for their home and their family, but not a lot of social position. The next category of people is artisans. Now remember, an artisan is a skilled craftsman. These are the people like the carpenters, the cobblers, which are people that made shoes, and the blacksmiths. And what they did was they made their goods, and then they took them and sold these goods in the market. They were taught by someone who had this skill, and they had to work as an apprentice for several years before they were able to kind of go out on their own and have their own business. They had a medium social status or social position because they did have voting rights, and they did have some responsibility for helping the community as a whole. And so the artisans, again, skilled craftsmen, had a medium social status. The next category is our large landowners. Now, these people were wealthy, they were educated, they had a very rich social culture, they owned large farms and plantations, they lived in mansions, and they relied on servants and indentured servants and slaves for taking care of their land and their crops, taking care of housework, and even taking care of their children. They had full voting rights, and they had a very high social status and social position. These were the people that usually came over here. They were rich while they were in England, and they came over here to kind of even have more status because they would be, in comparison to a lot of other people, even more wealthy. Our next category are our African Americans, and our African Americans are going to be actually split into 2 groups. Millions of these people were captured in Africa and sold to slave traders and then brought over here to the colonies. And a lot of them were considered property. They were owned as property. They had absolutely no rights whatsoever. Now, that's one category, and they had no social status whatsoever. The other category, they may have been captured and sold into slavery, but they either worked their way out of slavery or bought their way out of slavery or were set free. And these free African Americans did own a little bit of land, but they were still not allowed to vote. And so they, even though they were free, had very low social status. Next, we have our farmers. The farmers worked the land according to whatever region they were in, so their crops were different depending on where they lived. They had to rely on their family to help them. They didn't have the money to hire anyone to be their servant or to work their land. So the entire family had to help. From a very young age, children were working on the farm. They grew enough to feed their family, and any extra they had, they sold at the market for money. Now, they had a medium social status because the farmers still were considered part of the community, but they were not very wealthy, and so they didn't have a lot of pull when it came to making decisions. So they had a medium social status. Our next category are indentured servants. Now, these indentured servants, they were people over in England that didn't have the money to pay for their passage to the New World, so they would kind of hire themselves to someone who did have the money, and they would work without pay for 3 to 7 years. They had a contract with this person for 3 to 7 years, depending on how much it cost to get them over here. And they would work for those 3 to 7 years, and then usually they would be given a small plot of land when they were freed from that contract so that they could take care of themselves here in the New World. Most indentured servants were younger than 21 years of age, and a lot of them did not survive the 3 to 7 years of their contract because it was very hard work. They had absolutely no personal possessions usually because they're working for so long without any pay. So this small plot of land that they were given was very, very helpful, and that was kind of what they were working towards. They just wanted something to be able to make a life for themselves. Their social position, their social status was very low, and the only reason why it was anything at all is usually because they were from England, and so because of that, they had a little bit of social status. That's our entire look at the colonial people, so I hope that that helped you. Make sure you answer all the questions that go along with this video, and we will see you tomorrow at school. Bye.